Tyler from Unbound Athletic here today. We're going to talk about the Unbound Strength Progression. It is a 10-week strength program that runs alongside the CrossFit programming for you guys who come to Unbound Athletic. For the guys who don't come to Unbound Athletic but would like to join in this program, it is available on our website through unboundathletic.com.au/programs, but that is a small fee. For you guys doing our Unbound programming, this is a complimentary portion of your program to help develop strength to allow us to produce more force and allow us to be successful in more movements. One of the key points that people tend to forget is they spend so much time working on technique that they never actually develop their base strength to help complement the technique that they've now developed. The mindset behind this is we look at any element of fitness, and strength can be a paramount point that'll help you progress. For example, let's say running. If you squat 40 kilos and then you increase your squat to 80 kilos, your running strides become half as difficult, which means you can run twice as fast or you can go twice as far before fatiguing. The bike is the same, your pedal stroke becomes stronger. Obviously, gymnastics becomes easier as you can get yourself up and over the bar with less effort. Then finally, Olympic lifting. You can have all the technique you want, but at some point, you just physically won't be able to get out of the bottom of an overhead squat or a squat clean. So the stronger you get, the more successful those lifts will be. Obviously, having more muscle mass, bigger bones will obviously prevent injury. So these things are all key points to play in our strength program. Now, if you're an Unbound Athletic member, the program runs on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and it's underneath the end of the Waterfly workout for the CrossFit workout of the day. That being said, it doesn't have to be specific to those 3 days. I would just like 48 hours of rest between workouts. So it can be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I've just positioned it on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, as it allows the guys who are following the class program to get the Olympic lifting elements still in. So you get 2 touches on snatches, 2 touches on cleans per week. So getting more technical efficiency, but also building more strength and power underneath the bar. That being said, the final caveat before we explain the program is going to be the key point of this is a separate session. And I would highly suggest that you don't perform the CrossFit workout of the day on the Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. If you are following this format, this is your workout of the day. This will take between 60 and 90 minutes depending on strength level and recovery, and it is going to require your full intention and effort. But the offset improvement from this program will carry massive benefits into your training going into the future. Let's cover the program. There's 3 separate sessions: volume, accessory, and intensity, and each one is designed to hit a certain stimulus. The first session of the week is definitely by far the hardest, and it is the volume session, which is why there's only 3 movements rather than 4. We begin with back squats. Building leg strength is going to help improve all elements of your CrossFit ability. Not only is your squat going to improve your ability to produce force out of the bottom of any movement, but having a bigger back squat will also lead to a bigger front squat. We squat twice a week because there is so much squatting movements in CrossFit, and developing strong glutes, hamstrings, and quads will be key to obviously successfully lifting heavier weights. We're going to start week 1 with 5 sets of 5 at 72.5%. Now the percentage is a little bit arbitrary for the squat and the overhead press on week 1 because we haven't done the heavy 5 yet. I'll cover that in a moment. But from future weeks, you'll actually base your percentages or your weight on these 2 movements off what you achieve on the intensity session in the later session. 5 sets of 5, there is a set rest on Waterfly, but for the squat, it'll be somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. That might seem like a long time, but if we are not adequately recovering between sets, you're not going to be expected to produce maximal force, which means we're going to end up starting to fail lifts, which is not going to lead to strength gains. Obviously, the more rest means more recovery, and more recovery is going to be better performance. So the 5 to 10 minutes is a range. If you feel like 5 minutes is enough, rest 5 minutes. But the stronger you are, the more rest you're going to require. Overhead press, 5 sets of 5, 72.5%. The rest will be lower on this. 3 to 5 minutes rest between sets. Now, the overhead press is slightly different to the strict press, which you guys are a bit more adept to, but the overhead press has more carryover to push press, push jerks, snatches, and cleans. And I'll put out a video next week explaining how the difference of the overhead press to the strict press is and how it's performed. But if we are confused or not sure, the strict press is still going to be a great movement anyway to develop upper body strength. It just uses slightly less muscles than the overhead press. But 72.5%, it'll be a 3 to 5 minute rest between sets because arms recover quicker, they are smaller muscle groups, and we lift less weights. Final movement, power snatch. There's a lot of power snatches and power cleans in this program as we are developing the explosive power from the floor. We're increasing force production, and the power snatch and the power clean are great elements for that. The classes at the moment are pertaining a lot of squat cleans and squat snatches, so you'll get your full well-rounded programming by doing the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday class. 6 to 8 sets of doubles at 72.5%. The 1.1 just means you reset from the ground before your second rep. You don't have to go straight into it. You can do a 10-second break between rep 1 and rep 2. It just depends on how we feel. But technique is obviously important, but making sure we successfully hit lows is also important. 72.5% of your best power snatch, but if you don't know your best power snatch, just a moderate weight that is towards the heavier side. So that's session 1. That'll be the Tuesday session. Session 2 is an accessory session. This covers the front squat, which is an additional squatting modality added in there, but it is a bit more specific to Olympic lifting. The bottom of the clean is the hardest portion to get out of, and it requires a big front squat and an upright torso to achieve this position. The front squat is by design that movement, and Olympic lifters tend to prioritize the front squat over the back squat due to its transfer over to the clean. Now, having a bigger back squat is always going to improve your front squat, so doing both is going to be advantageous. The rep range is a lot lower on the front squat, mainly of one of two reasons. One, the rack position is harder to maintain, and two, we don't tend to do that many heavy cleans back to back. So having capacity for more than 3 reps is kind of unnecessary in this circumstance of developing strength. So we've gone 3 sets of 3, but the weight is a little bit heavier, 77.5%. We use less muscles on the front squat, and it's very quad dominant versus the back squats, which are a little bit more distributed, a bit nicer. The upper back tends to fatigue first on the front squat, so the lighter rep range, but the heavier weight will tend to benefit us more in Olympic lifting. We're then going to go into bench press. Now, bench press is not a massive priority in CrossFit. It is beneficial for building pec endurance for movements like burpees and push-ups and a lot of the devil's press style movements that tend to come up in the CrossFit space. It also has good carryover to the pressing movements, as having bigger pecs, shoulders, and triceps will carry over to better handstand push-ups, handstand walks, all of our good gymnastic exercises that are pressing based. But like I said, it doesn't have as big of a carryover as overhead pressing, so that's why there's only 1 session of bench press, but it just breaks up the monogamy of the session itself. So you'll do 5 sets of 5, 72.5%. The rest on both the bench and the front squats is the same as the overhead press, 3 to 5 minutes rest between sets, as the weights are generally lighter and the recovery is normally a little bit quicker. Power cleans, a bit of a different rep scheme to the snatches. The snatches get a double as the range of motion is larger, and normally the fatigue gets higher, the technical demand is higher. The cleans have a lower range of motion, a little bit less technical demand. Even though, yes, we are lifting heavier weights, that's what the reduction of sets is, but the reps will be relatively high. So at 15 total reps, still the same percentage as the snatches, and these two will progress the same throughout the entire cycle. The final movement is chin-ups. Now you notice you have chin-ups on the accessory and the intensity session twice a week. The reason we've gone with the chin-up variation versus a pull-up variation is the chin-ups use more muscle mass. Because the biceps are more involved, this will have good carryover to chest to bar, butterfly pull-ups, even to some circumstance, certain movements, especially deadlifts. Building up bigger biceps and lat strength will obviously help lock in the lats a little bit nicer and create more tension. Snatches and cleans will still keep more tension in the bar from the ground and keep the upper back more stable. And I find a lot of people tend to struggle with scapular activation on a pull-up, whereas the chin-up is a little bit easier because that position activates the scapulars nicely and keeps our hands in a closed off position, which makes the back a bit more firm. 3 sets of 6 to 10. Now I haven't written it down, but for both of those components, you will end up, if you reach 10 reps, you will progress either the weight or reduce the assistance. So the goal is you're rewarded for hitting the end of the rep range. The rep range is there to obviously help cater to people who are struggling with the movement. So make sure you choose an assistance or a weight resistance that is going to enable you to get between 6 to 10, at least for all 3 sets. A little bit less rest on the chins, 2 minutes rest between sets. Let's move on to the final day. Session 3, intensity session. This is the funnest session of the week. Now we squat, we press, we deadlift, the only session we deadlift at all throughout the week, and we do the chin-ups again, which we've already covered. Let's cover how we approach these sessions. Now rest is going to be up to you as far as how long you rest between sets, but you want to obviously recover well. With the building phase, we don't necessarily want to do 5s all the way up to our starting weight, but at least have a rough idea of where our starting weight is. I'd say 80% of your 1 rep max on both of these movements is a good position to start on. That being said, we can get anywhere from 80 to 90% of your 1 RM comfortably for 5 repetitions, but don't go too courageous. We've got plenty of weeks of 5s, and we're looking at progressing week to week. So adding weight for the 5s until we get to the point where at a particular portion of the program, I believe it's week 4, that goes from 5 to 3 reps. So we have a slight adjustment in rep scheme to gain further progression throughout the cycle. Now remember, whatever weight we hit here is based on a percentage and a calculation we'll use for the next week's overhead press and squat volume work. So that you get punished for going really hard, but it's in a good way. It's for your own benefit and improvement. Once you finish the squats, you'll hit the overhead press. Once the overhead press done, you'll do the deadlifts. Like I said, the deadlifts, even though yes, we're still building to a heavy 5, the only reason there's only 1 session a week of deadlifts is because they're hyper fatiguing. They're really stressful for the CNS because it's the easiest way to lift the most weight. The range is pretty good. The activation, the full body work is pretty good. It is just the fact that it's so heavy, it'll have such a big attack on your CNS system, and it will unfortunately mean that the rest of your sessions in the week will be struggling, which is why it's on the last session of the week. You get the full weekend to recover, so 3 days or 72 hours, and then you can come back in the next week feeling fresh and good. The deadlift, each week you'll try and beat your heavy 5 from the previous week, as obviously the rep range goes down. It'll be easier to beat that, and we're gonna progress all these towards a 1 rep max in week 9 and week 10. Cool. There's plenty of progression for this program in the rest of the cycle, and as we go through, I'll touch on each portion of the cycle as we get to the next phase. But this phase runs for about 3 weeks, and the weight will slowly go up on each of the movements. There won't be much change at all in the variance of the program. It'll just be weights overall will be going up. If you have any questions about the program, or you want to come to me about technique work or any of these movements, just reach out, unboundathletic.com.au, and we'll be able to help out, or just reach out personally on Instagram. You can reach out on our mobile number, whatever's going to help. But that being said, this is all available on Modify. The only thing I ask from you guys is please measure your progression. You don't know what you did last week if you don't track it. What is measured is improved. Good luck, and I hope you guys get nice and strong.